good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important 90 minutes of your day. Hello, I'm Michael, the MC and opportunity ambassador for today's show. And today's show is Earthstrong for Earth. With me today is some of my favorite co hosts, and we've got a special guest as well. But let me start with Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Oh, unmuted myself. Hi, it's nice to be here, and I'm really looking forward to getting the explanation of the word Earthstrong. I think that's cool.
Willow, our trauma consultant.
Hi, everyone.
Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love, Earthlings.
And our very special guest, Justin. And his specialty in regards to Earth will probably come into play. But how are you doing today, Justin?
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. Glad to share my passion for this subject that is of such great importance.
The Earth.
Mm.
But this
When
is
was the last?
Sorry,
Dennis.
go Dennis.
When was the last time you got your hands dirty in the earth?
Hands dirty in the earth. Picking up dog poop this morning. That would be the last literal time.
No, you beat me. Mine was yesterday. Repotted some of my plants. Excuse me.
I
Haven't been growing too much. Composting plenty.
had a bonfire the other day. Does that count?
That's
Did
close
you
enough
touch
to
the
the earth.
dirt?
Dirty. I got dirty. I was like in the ashes, moving things around.
I had sand all in my swimsuit yesterday.
Well, that's a way of grounding yourself as well. Anyway,
Should we ask why? There was sand in your
I was trying to put flippers on, and I thought, okay, I'll just do it real quick, and I'll just sit on the thing, and then the wave hit me, and then I was just like, my pants were full of sand.
That's not what I was thinking, but it's all good.
let's just say we're glad you're still alive.
Yeah.
Anyway, Earthstrong. Anyone heard this word before?
You told us it was something Jamaican.
Yeah, big time. It's not Patois, which is the language that's spoken in Jamaica. Officially, it's English, but then Patois is what people talk on the road. But then there's another kind of language or slang that people talk, and that's called Rasta talk. So that comes back from the Rastafarian culture and tradition, and there's certain words from Rasta talk that have entered mainstream patois, but that people actually assimilated over the years, and actually one of them that can be heard quite often is Earthstrong, and it actually means birthday. So if you're going to a birthday party, you're celebrating someone's Earthstrong. And because the earth is one of the elements that we have not been covering, we thought today is the day for earth. So let's cover the element of earth with all its aspects. And, each one of us certainly has had contact with the element of earth. So, let's share some of our experiences, some of our backgrounds, which are very diverse. And, see if we can provide some value and, help each other and help our listeners to connect more to earth, because I feel it's something that maybe many of us would have lost contact with. If you look around, like you barely see anybody walking barefoot, at least where I am right now. It depends a little bit on the weather. Most of us have on shoes all the time. So the physical connection with the earth has become something rare, I would dare to say. Then we live in houses. There's no earthen floors, which I can tell a little story later about as well. And so just the general connection with the earth that we actually live on is certainly diminished nowadays. What do you guys think about that? Are you still feeling connected to the earth? Are you walking barefoot on the earth from time to time?
I try to walk barefoot in the yard at least once a day, usually with my coffee in the morning, get my coffee, go outside. My husband has to remind me to take my socks off, though, because sometimes I'll just walk out there with my socks and then they get wet. It's just not fun.
What about you, Agnieszka?
I just did the announcement, so I'm good now. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, you announced to the earth.
Yes, so we have this beautiful little patch of moss right in front of our front door, was sort of on the other side of the patio, and I walk barefoot on the moss quite a bit. And you know what else happened this week? We had a bunch of mushrooms. They're pushing through the moss, and there are like 4 or 5 different places. I don't know if it's like a ring, because sometimes mushrooms grow in a ring, right? It's not necessarily like a ring because it's just a few spots, but I'm observing them and I want to see what kind of mushrooms come up. Right now they're too small to identify. So, and I don't want to kill one to identify it. So I'm going to wait for them to be a little bigger so I can see what kind of mushrooms they are.
Nice one. Justin, I know you have a very intimate relationship with earth, with soil, or dirt, as some people call it. There's a movie called Dirt. You guys watch that movie?
I think I have a long time ago.
It's a recommendation. Yeah, it was a nice movie. But anyway, Justin, like I know you have a lot of things to share about the earth, about the soil. You have been working with soil. You have an amazing project that I heard about. What do you feel like sharing about you and soil?
Certainly. There is a difference between soil and dirt. I define it that soil is living, dirt is inert. So soil as a living organism is actually an ecosystem made up of a bunch of smaller organisms in symbiosis, and that goes down to microbiology as far as bacteria goes. It also goes into the fungi as far as we've already talked about, the mushroom fruiting bodies that we see are actually sustained by a large intercellular network that is fungi, and it's an incredible networking organism. So when you actually pair all these different organisms together, as far as the fungi, the microbes, the worms, the nematodes, and then the soil starts to balance itself as a living organism that's able to decompose the organic matter on top of it and retain moisture. That's when you actually start turning dirt into soil and bioremediating and helping to heal our earth, which is actually a pretty
What?
bioremediating.
Bioremediating. Everybody pull out your dictionary.
I'll define it. It's a process of aiding the development of our environment.
Nice.
So it's actually us as organisms in this environment. We are part of a larger system, playing parts as stewards to reintroduce whatever an environment needs so that it can develop at its pace rather than just leaving it to the course of nature. We can actually speed up the healing process of Earth and its soil greatly. I think it's a great point you brought up about walking barefoot, because as humans, these actual biological vessels that we have, we are constantly transmitting and receiving electromagnetic frequencies with our environment. And our shoes actually act as insulators between the earth and our bodies. So walking with shoes or walking on concrete, you're actually not grounded, and that's the meaning of the word grounded, is that you have that true root within yourself connected to the earth. And it's there are ways to do it outside of it, but one of the simplest is just to be barefoot outside, and then you're in communion. So
nice.
So basically, what I've been taught is that if you take up proper soil, like well developed, like prime soil, and you have a hand of it, you take up a hand of it, then the living beings that are in that soil, the number of them would actually match the number of humans that are inhabiting the planet right now.
It's in the billions. It's incredible how much life is active on the microorganism level in healthy soil.
And if you really look at the cycle of life, then the physical part of our being, it certainly it ultimately it comes from dirt, from the soil, and that's where it goes back as well. So
or isn't
we are
that
obviously
salt? Alchemically, wouldn't that be a salt? Like after everything is stripped away, the actual core crystalline structure?
You mean salt in terms of the
essence,
the mineral elements?
The physical. Well, alchemically, I think. I wish Gabriel was here, but he's moving today. Because he's
So
got
that
a
is
handle on all that alchemical angle of things.
so that is what the soil provides as well, right? Like if you look at plants, that's what plants pull out of the soil, and it's really amazing to look at the tree. Like nature majors in trees, so just to study trees and to study forests, like that is amazing. And Justin, you touched upon it already, that there's like a network of communication like in between those living beings that inhabit the soil, and that also, you know, that are rooted in the soil, like trees. So for instance, if something is happening on one side of the forest, you know, within, you know, seconds, the other side of the forest, the trees know what's going on, so they react to it. They react to you know, bugs or certain environmental conditions, and that's truly amazing. That really blew my mind. If you look at that, the other when we were talking about water the other week, we were talking about you know, how we cannot even explain the water pump system, like how, you know, huge trees actually are able to pump the quantity of water, you know, to such altitudes. And you know, we have not come up with systems or with pumps that can lift water as effectively as trees, for example, do. So it's mind-boggling if you really start to look closer at nature and at those systems that are, again, rooted in the earth, right?
And you're
Yeah.
exactly right. That connection, that network that actually lives underneath the forest, fungi is an intelligent network. That's pretty much the foundation of it. It has survived through multiple past extinctions that other organisms didn't. It works as a primary decomposer. It's the only organism that can break down the harder woody tree material. And you're absolutely right that it talks with itself. If a plant forms a symbiotic relationship with fungi, that fungi is it's mycorrhizal fungi, so it'll actually form that positive relationship. And fungi can actually expand a plant's root systems by up to 10 times. And if it has multiple plants connected to one fungal organism, the fungi can actually be responsible for conveying and transferring nutrients between the plants so that the entire system can maintain health at the same time. And it is truly remarkable the way that if a fungi encounters a new food source, it goes through a process of trying out combinations of enzymes it already has until it's able to break down the new food source. And as soon as it knows what enzyme is needed to break down this food source, the entire organism suddenly has the pattern ready to go if it ever comes in contact with that food source. And
So you know
it's
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that
sure.
how they said that the mice were actually responsible for everything on Earth. What if
Okay.
the fungi are actually responsible for everything on Earth?
I think you're
Well,
close
I'm
to the truth with that.
I'm pretty sure that the mycelium in the Pacific Northwest is actually known as the largest living organism in the country.
In the state of Washington, it was the largest organism in the world.
Okay, I didn't want to,
until
go too
Walker's
far, but
Yeah.
Okay, I have to say hi to Tony. Hi, Tony. Tony McCarty. He's complimenting us on our great minds again. Thank you. We appreciate that.
How did you relate to the soil, to the earth, you know, when you were a child, when you were a little bit running up and down outside, as compared to now? Do you have any
So
memories?
I grew up mostly in consumer society cities with rocks and artificial landscaping and hard inert dirt. I didn't really spend a lot of time around farms. I didn't really spend any time in the soil. I wasn't surrounded by healthy living soil. There was only one member of my surrounding family that actually practiced gardening, and I didn't live near her, so I didn't actually get a whole lot of experience. It wasn't until later in my life when I was traveling and started talking with some people who had already spent many, many years in the field that I started to get the picture painted of why it was important. And then trailed into my own self studies.
Wow. What about you guys? Michael, did you have any a closer relationship to
Oh,
soil that you had
absolutely.
when you were younger than now?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was I raced dirt bikes, so
So he's
definitely got a lot
planted
of
on
dirt
the
on
earth
me.
a lot.
I practically like lived with dirt on my face all the time and in my mouth and stuff. And then of course, even before that, I had a sand pile that I just like I would my uncle would dump a load of sand in the backyard, and I would just flatten it over the over the summer using Tonka toys and stuff like that. And then of course my grandfather was a farmer. We had a lot of the family on that side were farmers and so forth. So as I probably like 8 years old, I started working with my grandfather in the summertime. And let me tell you, boy, that was not easy, man. He'd work you from like 5 o'clock in the morning until 6, 7 o'clock at night every day, and you know, just it never ended. And he wasn't raising livestock or anything. This was all corn and beans and pumpkins and you know all the other vegetables that were growable in Northwest Indiana.
It's something else, right? If you're aware through those kind of experiences and through that that life experience, that so many things that surround us and that sustain us come from the dirt, from the ground, from the earth. We're talking. You just talked about food. Even like shelter, fuel, medicine, ceramics, flowers, cosmetics, color, like all those things, they ultimately come from dirt. They're made out of that. But if you have not witnessed or experienced, the process and thought of it or made yourself aware of it, then you know there's so many kind of frightening scenes and videos that one can observe today where little children in preschool are exposed to certain kind of fruits and to yield from the fields, and they cannot even name it. And they think it comes from the supermarket and it comes out of a plastic bag. So
Mm-hmm.
that is really, that's a that's a sad situation. And it's really like it stands for the split or for the separation that I can see, not only on a larger level on society right now, that division that's going on, but that's a divide within each uh, one of us. Like if we cannot see, if we cannot feel like in every moment that we are part of this, of nature, that we're part of this, amazing ecosystem that we live in and that we grow up in, then like how can we ground ourselves if we live in that kind of division, on a physical level, on an emotional, even on the intellectual level. We cannot even imagine or reason or name the things that come ultimately from earth, and then we name it dirt, and don't get yourself dirty, don't put your hands in the dirt, and when that in itself is what boosts our immune system. I mean, it obviously, there's things in the earth that are living and that are enhancing life, but there's also things that can harm us. There's certain bacteria, certain things that can be potentially really harmful for us, but still we are part of it. And it's important, I feel, to be aware of that, because it can really change our it can impact the way that how we interact, not only with the earth, but with everything that flourishes on earth. So
Absolutely.
how did that change you when you became more aware that we are intimately related with what we are walking upon on a daily level?
Well, I think like watching my grandfather grow things, I think it was always interesting to me because it was magic because when you plant a seed, of course in like a farming situation, you're not just planting one, you're planting like a million, and to get them all to grow, and then as they start to grow, knowing what to do, he had like a really magic touch. He would be able to like taste, he'd bite the leaf and stuff like that, and be able to know like do we need to water it more, do we need to water it less, you know what's going on, what do we need to add to the soil. He was really a organic farmer before there was organic, I mean before the word organic farmer even came out. And then his son, my uncle, was kind of the modern farmer, where he was like the industrial farmer using the petrochemicals and that kind of thing. And although my uncle's farm, looked fabulous, like the plants were super green and the dirt was, that black color, and it looked amazing. Um, you know, uh, I thought it was, it was just very odd compared to my grandfather's farm.
What I hear there is communication also. What came to my mind is like, wow, like, so your grandfather, like, he was communicating with the plants, with the life that surrounded him, biting in it, taking a look, feeling it. And I think that's really essential. Like, once we stop communicating with each other and with the stuff that surrounds us, then there's friction. So there is even communication that is beyond our awareness. Justin, you just mentioned earlier about the electromagnetic nature of our being as well, and how that even connects, to the soil, how there's a relationship there. So that's a communication that we're not even aware of, or that we can't even feel. And yet that reminded me also of Dr. Klinghardt, who seems to be studying mushrooms and the relationship mushrooms have with electromagnetic frequencies. And I think that's like a cutting edge research that's being done as we speak, whereas the protective potential of certain mushrooms, in order to fight off or to protect oneself from electromagnetic frequencies and from electromagnetic radiation, is something that he specifically is working on. Have you heard about that, Justin?
That's actually my first time hearing about the research done into the electromagnetics of fungi itself.
I don't know much about it either, but I know that there's some special capacities that mushrooms, or certain mushrooms, have when it comes to not being impacted negatively by electromagnetic frequency. So I thought that was highly interesting as well.
Wasn't that one of the theories for how trees pump water up, to the... Sorry, my words are eluding me today, but to the treetops, was that some people suspect that there might be an electromagnetic field that's actually allowing or facilitating that process, instead of it being like a pump.
Yeah, I think Gabriel mentioned that in the water sequence, right? I think he was expanding on that a little bit. It's amazing, isn't it? Like how so there's a connection right there, between the earth topic and the water topic, like the trees pulling water out of the earth, and in with that water comes the minerals that are being pulled up from inside the earth. So certain plants bring up certain minerals more than others, and then they can be joined together with purposefully. And that's the role Justin mentioned earlier, that we as humans, we have the potential to really rejuvenate Earth and make it heaven, so to speak. And that was something that blew me away, really learning about permaculture. Like it seemed all in a sudden like I was made aware of the fact that, wow, actually, like, all the tools, the strategies, they're right there and right here, at our hands. So there's people, and it's not even few, but there's people around that have that communication with Earth, that know what to do, how to treat Earth in order to to make it a paradise, basically. And that's something that gave me a lot of hope. Agnieszka, when was the last time you communicated with your plants?
I do that all the time. How else would you know when to water them? You can't just do a schedule. That's just not right. Actually, what happened is this one girl I met maybe more than 10 years ago, and she was just a magician with plants. And then one day I was looking at my plants, which were like haphazard, and I was thinking, she's not smarter than me. I can do that too. I can figure it out. And I started putting a little bit more effort and a little bit more attention to my plants. And basically it was almost like magic when the little bit of effort that I put toward my plants, and my plants, I felt, maybe I'm crazy, but I felt like they were communicating back. Like there was a a back and forth going on. Like they were like, "Oh, you can hear us. Well, then this is what I need, and this is what I need," and it worked really well. So I don't know. Do you guys talk to plants? Who else
I
talk to?
talk to my plants. I name some of them, especially ones that are given to me by other people. Um, Someone once told me about, like, it was like a witchy practice where this person would get a plant and she'd name it after someone. And then anytime that plant was doing kind of bad, she'd go to that person and be like, "What's troubling with you? What's bothering you? What's troubling you?" And a lot of times it was actually like they needed help with something. So it was kind of her way of empathizing with other people through plants. I always thought that was
Monitoring.
fun, and ever since I heard that, I started like actually talking to my plants a little bit and being like, "Oh, look at you, little basil plant. You're just doing so good. You're getting so fluffy, and I'm so excited. Oh, you look like you need some water." I don't know if it helps, but it does seem, my plants. Maybe it's because I'm paying more attention. It might just be the fact that I'm paying more attention to them. I feel like they do better.
What other strategies do you have to kind of ground yourself? Earlier we touched upon, walking barefoot, being barefoot on the soil, ideally on the earth itself. You just talked about plants, interacting with plants. Is there anything else that you do on a regular basis, or even from now to then, that grounds you, that connects you to the
I
ground?
Along with my like drinking coffee and walking around in my backyard barefoot, I like to find a patch of sunlight almost first thing in the morning. One of my favorite things to do is grab my coffee, go outside, sit in a patch of sunlight. And maybe, I'm barefoot, my feet are on concrete. Maybe I'll wander out into the yard a little bit. Um, but gardening helps with that because it encourages me to go out there and inspect my plants. And then, by default, I'm out there barefoot and, bathing in the sunlight, a little bit. I feel like a plant myself a lot of times where I'm like, all right, get you some water, go, stick your feet in some dirt, get some sunlight, be a plant for 10 minutes, and then go be a human.
Why is it important to be grounded?
Well, this is a really important topic that we've been talking about, and it's grounding with the earth, but it's also being in communion with the other living systems in the earth. And there are a lot of ways that we do that. One of which, like we've already mentioned, is just talking with our plants and being empathic and in tune with them. But another major way of communicating with our environment is consuming our environment, and that's actually eating what we grow from. And that is a whole actual facet of us having direct connection with the soil that grew whatever food it is that we're eating, or whatever animal eats that food in the web of things. Uh, but in terms of being grounded or in communion with the foods that we eat, uh, it's no coincidence that though it does have some religious or mystical overtones, the bread and wine ministry, when we look at it, is actually breads before instant yeasts were all naturally leavened through a microbial process of fermentation. So it becomes a living organism before it's baked. And the wines, of course, use yeasts, which are single-celled fungi, to convert the naturally occurring sugars into alcohols. So the whole premise of the bread and wine, uh, the bread and wines, is that you are in communion with living foods. And as you start to work with soil and start to work with microorganisms, the microorganisms inside of our bodies actually start to adapt and communicate with the microorganisms in our soils, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to eat local if you can, is because our bodies actually do communicate on a biological cellular level with the food that we eat. And that's an important part of communication that it's actually how our microorganisms get updated, if you will.
That reminds me of the honey, which is always great to eat local honey, right? Because then there's that interaction of the bees, of your local bees, with the local uh, flowers, with the local plants, and then that's a direct benefit because you have that feedback from the nature that surrounds you basically through the honey that you may consume. I thought
Well,
also what you just said is like it's really like an alchemic process right there, like all around us, right? Because then what we're really consuming is an interaction of fire, the sun, of water, of wind, of the earth, the soil. So those elements are really what we are taking in, what we are consuming with what we eat, because it's an interaction of those four elements, the sun that is the sun and the air, along with water and the soil, the minerals that make up plant matter, which then, in case people enjoy meat, is what animals would consume. So that would be like a more indirect form of taking up those elements basically through animals. If you take it from plants, that is the sunlight, the fire element, so to say, being transformed into plant matter, and then there's people who obviously don't even need that, and who can just straight get it from the sun if they so choose. But I just like saw this whole alchemic process going on in nature all around us every time.
So we have some
we've got,
comments.
yeah, I was just about to say that.
Go
I
ahead.
really liked Pam's. So Pam Batchelder said, "We name some trees for dearly departed family," and I think that's a wonderful practice where you know they are a part of the environment and you get to go visit with them. It kind of keeps the not only the memory alive, but gives you a physical place to go and speak. It's similar to like a gravesite, where you're not going there to speak to the stone and the ground. You're going there to speak to their memories, and I love that you can translate that to another living thing. But
Do you guys
then
know of the tradition to plant a tree over the placenta of a newborn?
I didn't know it was over the placenta. I know that there's one about newborn tree planting, but there's a placenta at the bottom of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
So and then it said that the fruits that this tree will bear are especially good for that
the person.
Mm-hmm.
So does the tree pick up any like DNA or something from the placenta? Like how does that work?
I'm not sure, but there's these the Ringing Cedar books that talk about this mystical woman in Russia, Anastasia, and she, among many other things, she talks about the importance of when you're planting, of putting those seeds in your mouth for a little while, and basically, so part of your DNA, part of through your saliva, basically touches them, and then that supposedly has the fruits that these plants will bear are then especially well designed for your consumption.
See, before Justin was talking about the mycelium, I would be confused by that comment, but now I'm like, oh, electromagnetic messages and da. Oh, that makes sense. Now it makes sense.
Well,
You
it's
yourself,
also,
you mentioned, sorry.
it's also that when you have a collection of bacteria, let's say, that's not all the same bacteria. There are countless numbers of slight variations and major variations, and what actually results in a SCOBY, as we know through like making kombuchas, a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, is that eventually they form a symbiotic relationship. So it actually does learn when you mix living biological matters together, living organisms together, and the food that they consume, they will actually adapt to that environment, and they will become more, you can like pre-train something to accept something. And that's like growing a tree over a placenta. Like, yeah, it's actually going to know that bacteria that was in that body. It's actually going to know, where the food source came from. It actually has a part of that, not only the genetic code too, because everything is in the communication, but for example, when I do ferments, I will make my own blends of beneficial activated bacteria just for soil, but I will drink some of it myself after it ferments so that I have that bacteria in my body so that it's not just my mind alone thinking about how to communicate with this soil. I actively have bacteria in my body that knows the exact same cultures that I'm putting into the soil and composting with. Uh,
So
and
how
to
do you
do
do
that,
the ferments for the soil? What do you do?
so I do get a mother culture from a company here in the United States that does a very respectable job at having good quality mother cultures, and then you feed it molasses into a clean water, and the bacteria will expand, and then you'll be able to put that on your soil, and that will actually start to decompose the organic matter and form symbiotic relationships with the plants that are there. And when I do that kind of ferment right before I start it, when I mix the molasses and mother culture, I'll just like breathe into it so that all of that bacteria can it can learn who I am as it goes through that process, so that when it's fully fermented, it's already pre-trained to work with me.
So we have one more comment on Facebook from
Tony.
Tony McCurdy. He says, plants are definitely awesome creatures. I play music in the garden all the time. They seem to like reggae and the Grateful Dead more than anything. I can almost feel that they are happier when it is playing.
Nice one.
But this whole conversation about like, planting trees over placentas, and what comes to mind is the dead being buried with a tree, and having these forests that are essentially graveyards, and thinking about like all of the superstition about like haunted forests. And it makes me think, it's like, what if it's not actually haunted? What if the forest actually is picking up DNA from these beings that have been put in the ground? I'm like, I wonder if someone was like super empathetic, if they could like walk through and kind of sense like, oh yeah, there's Uncle Johnny over there, and you know, just that kind of played with my mind for a second.
I remember my grandfather when we went walking on the graveyard, and graveyards is something really beautiful here. So they're like, forest-like, garden-like. They're not in other places I've seen in the world where it's, not that nice. And so we often used to take walks, and visit, the graves of our ancestors and water them and take care of the flowers. And, he was in a lot of pain, but then he had this special tree on the graveyard. And it was like a huge tree, and he always used to lean against it. And it wasn't, until, many times that I realized, and I asked him, and I said, like, what are you actually doing? Because he always loved to stand there and just lean against the tree. And he revealed that, that is what eased his pain. So just leaning with his back against the tree, that was really what gave him, it's like it was very soothing to him, and it helped him for quite a while actually to to ease off the pain that he had. And later on, I found out that that's something a few people are actually practicing. And now there's this new, but new, it's not new, but what is this called? Where people actively, purposefully go into the woods to to walk through the woods, and because recently I think it has been scientifically confirmed that even like just a half an hour in the woods per
Oh,
week
forest
is
bathing. It's called forest
yes,
bathing.
that's it. That's the word. Yeah, have you
I
heard
was
about
like,
that?
are you talking about the Japanese suicide thing? No, no, no. You're talking
No.
about forest bathing. That's what it is. Never mind.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't sure at the beginning there.
Although that Japanese suicide forest is really fascinating to me.
When I think about being rooted, being grounded, it reminds me of the physical roots. What does it mean to be well rooted? What does it mean for a tree, let's say, to stand and have about the same space that the crown of the tree occupies? Like it is mirrored in the soil, actually, the space that is being occupied, so to say, by the roots. And to be well rooted, what does that mean? That means to be stable. It means to be connected with that which is below, which you could see as your ancestors as well, right? It means to have the ability to pull up energies which are running from top down, anyway. It means to be able to pull those resources up. It means to be to be nourished from the base, from the foundation. There's water, there's minerals, there's many things that you can pull up if you're well grounded. and it means to be stable, to have stability. So to be all just airy is, and to lose the feet, for your feet not to touch the ground, um, it seems like something is lacking. So to find that balance and to find that harmony, on all the levels that we really, that we're interacting with this so-called reality that we're living in, I think that is a noble goal to have. So on the physical level, to be grounded and to have the ability to ground yourself in situations where where you might, be very airy or very much up in your head. I think it is an important ability to have, and it can be
See,
trained,
Sam?
really.
It's an important ability you have to be
Say
up
what?
in to be airy and be up in the earth or
Certainly,
above.
yeah.
This
Yeah.
is her
So
superpower. Hang on a
this
sec,
opens-
because
still
Pam
learning.
had a question. Hang on, Justin, 1 second. Pam wanted to know if your grandpa used the linden tree to for the special tree. Was it a linden? Linden balm.
I'm not 100% sure. I think it might have been an oak. I don't think it was a lind. I don't even know the English word for linde, but we call it linde. Linden are
Linden.
tree. Oh, it's in
Linden.
English as well?
I believe
Okay.
so.
Yeah, they're like linden that traditionally they used to be grown in the center of the village, and those are the trees that you would put the benches around. Those round benches that go around the stem. Um, so they have many powers, so to say, and people knew about them anciently, and that's why they put them in the center of the village and made sure they sit with their back to it.
Nice.
But sorry,
Sorry,
Justin was just gonna say something.
Oh, back to okay. So it opens the door to the conversation how what is below corresponds to that which is above, and how that which is above corresponds to that which is below. And in many teachings, let's say, you get some phrases like "stay rooted in the light," and I think that's a really important notion that we've come up with as humans, because we seem to have this substance matter, physical matter, and then we also have this light, and everything seems encompassed in this one thing that has these two aspects. And as far as plants go, they're in the physical matter and they're rooted into the physical matter, and they fruit on this middle ground where we walk the earth. And we, as beings that don't have roots in the ground, we grow roots in the light, and those roots also fruit in this world that we share together. So there's a really interesting correlation where we have both beings that root in the physical matter, and we have beings that root in ethereal.
Are you touching your cable, Justin? Because it's kind of making a funny thing right now with your microphone.
That's a dog who's a little.
Oh no, not your dog. The microphone is going. Your dog sounds fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can hear the dog.
There's
and
nothing
it's not
wrong with
bothering.
your dog. I was wondering if it was the puppy or the older dog, but that was just a side question.
The older dog, for that matter.
All right.
I just saw the picture of a lotus flower, being rooted way down there in the pond, like pretty deep in the dirt and in the muck, and then growing all the way like through the water, and at the surface of the water, you have this beautiful flower opening up, and then that air element is like what I can see in the scent, so the scent of the flower, and then there's like flower essence. That's a whole different thing again, but so it really seems to what's the word, to transpass like all the different elements and different stages.
It's funny because the lotus flower, there is a what is it, a simile or allegory for the lotus flower, where it has to grow through so many meters of muck before it can see the water, and water before it can see the light. And Lisa Archeski was talking about the other day, but I think I was sitting there looking at you going, no, that was at the women's group meeting, so there's no way you were there listening to that. But yet you come up
And I believe actually we were talking about lilies.
oh,
which
Lily,
they
not
have a similar-
lotus. Yeah,
They have a
path, right.
similar process for growing too.
Yeah. We have a women's group. You wouldn't know anything about it, but we meet every Tuesday.
Well, don't give him the time.
I didn't.
Shh. Secret.
Don't worry. We're gonna have a men's group too. Shh, it's a secret. All right, back to the Earth.
Earthstrong.
Yeah, we already got all these. Earthstrong.
Earthstrong.
Why is that the name for birthday? Can you explain that a little bit deeper?
Well, I can only guess still, but there's a connection. The Earth in itself, the two words Earth and strong. So that's a powerful thing in itself. So
Is
how
it like
strong?
green language where you take on those abilities, like you embody them?
You want to explain green language?
No, it's too difficult. I'm not really sure if I know what I'm talking about. Anybody else?
I certainly don't want to try that one.
Something about words that like resonate deep within. How about that? Let's keep it with that definition. Because
Well, Earth is a word that definitely does resonate deep within myself, and strong too. Like, to be strongly rooted within the element of Earth, and to have that, on a physical sense. We talked about that, and to have your processes and your ways, maybe your ritual, how to center yourself, how to balance out yourself. That certainly is important, and to be just in the earth or to be just down there, that would be as unbalanced as the example you gave earlier, when you're just up in the head. So there might be situations and times where it's important to focus on one aspect, but generally I feel what we're really seeking is to find balance, and to make that correlation that Justin touched upon earlier, the as below so above, and as above so below. So if energies, if vibrations are running, between the earth and the sky, and you're right in the middle, then maybe part of our job is also to make those run free, to remove the blockades, because it's flowing already. So the flow is there already. We don't have to invent that. It's there, but it's the ability to feel that and to remove the blocks that we may still have, in order to find that balance, in order to be in balance with our world, so to say, and to be in harmony and in balance. I think that again is a goal that is worth seeking, because imagine you can be in balance with every living being around you, how our world would look.
Trying to
And to be
imagine
in-
that. I don't know if I can. Because every living being, what about the jerk? Like down the street to the left, that jerk. I don't know, there is no street, but that's not the point. Do we have to be one with them too?
I think so.
Are we not one with him as well already?
Well, I mean, to separate yourself from trying to understand them, you do yourself and them a disservice. Like, if you don't fully understand a problem, you have no way to help it. You just label it, you either get away from it, or you totally take it on as your own problem. You can kind of get sucked in. It's not until you fully understand the situation. To fully understand the situation and fully understand someone, it's like that saying, you have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. You have to think like they do, see what they're using these tools for, how they're dealing with issues, to really fully understand how you can help.
Yeah, and maybe some of us have to experience a jerk in order to not be a jerk. How would we know it's a jerk, if we only surrounded by, those kind, beautiful people all day, every day long?
But if we were just surrounded by kind, beautiful people, we would all be kind and beautiful, and that's the goal, right?
Maybe we wouldn't be able to appreciate that. Maybe it takes a jerk here and there in order to appreciate what we have.
Well, we're certainly surrounded by beautiful people in this group.
Maybe it takes a grounding from now to then in order to be able to feel, when we are all up in the air and without our feet touching the ground. I remember years and years back when I was training, karate back then, and had some really amazing teachers there. and one of the principles I learned there was that, when you strike, let's say with your hands, that it's not, it's not your muscle alone. They play obviously like a role, but it's actually like a connection. So there's like a chain of there's a connection between, the extended fist, let's say, that the part that you actually strike and make contact with, to your foot that is grounded in, like, well, in the ground, in the earth. And whenever that chain is broken, so there's weakness, and then the strike is not ideal, is not perfect. And so it was a search of a perfect chain reaction basically throughout the body. So instead of, you're striking only with with your physical body, there's actually a connection, and there's a way of executing the technique so that you get that kind of energy from the ground up throughout your body to the fist. And if you can technically
Oh, so like you
execute
pull
it.
the energy from the earth and you throw it with your fist? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's an awareness of that the strike comes from the ground. It's not only, like, or your body or the muscles in your arm that actually strike. You can do it like that too, but then it is like a vastly different experience and effect
So
also that you may have with it.
that's how all those people, they when they try to break the pieces of wood, they try and they can't do it, but when they actually succeed, it's because they got the energy from elsewhere in addition to their own energy, and that's why they're suddenly stronger. Is that how it works?
Not sure, like I can't really speak for them, but there's certainly and there's those break tests, and there's a makivara, there's certain those are like boards that are like a few inches away from the wall where you can kind of test and where you can see the potential of the strikes. And it's very interesting to experiment with that. Like, I haven't been one of the guys who broke different things as part of my training, but I would imagine that certainly plays a part as well. Yeah.
If that's true, that would make a lot of sense. I watched a video, of course, it was just, a little video on Facebook where it was like this really young kid. I'd say probably 6, 7 years old. And he was doing the karate. He was trying to break the board with his foot. And he did it like 4 times, and by the end of it, by the fourth time, he was like so frustrated and so mad that he started crying. He was like, I can't do this, I'm embarrassed, whatever, just like, I'm done with this, I'm really frustrated. And all the kids around him started like just chanting his name, and they're like, you got this, you can do it, we know you can do it. And then as soon as he got ready, everyone just went really quiet and he broke the board. And I was like, at the time I was like, oh yeah, I see what motivation like can help you relax your own body and focus in on what you actually need to do and what you can do. But if what you're saying is true, that could be a little bit of evidence to it.
Well, and then they were all throwing their energy at him when they were chanting, right? So he felt stronger right off the bat.
Yeah.
Maybe strong enough to pull the energy from the earth.
And then also something that I feel, even right now, playing capoeira, some of the nicest experiences I've had playing capoeira was when we were able to play on the ground, not on concrete floor or some sports floor, but outside in the ground, in the grass, or even better, like on some rammed earth floor. So that's really amazing. That's a whole different feeling to it, and that's a connection right there, just by by treading on the ground, by standing. There's a different connection through to your environment than being like in some kind of inside place. And to be able to feel that and to appreciate that.
But how do you do that in
does a lot.
Germany? It's like ice and snow, and inside is the
Not
only
yet.
way.
There wasn't even snow last year. Well, where I'm still. But yeah, well, you have to like the cold if you want to play
mean,
barefoot outside.
I don't know
So-
about like ice and snow. That would be really hard for me to like go out barefoot. But I did have this experience. Went out to our annual camping trip, and it was just pouring rain the entire weekend. And I had tried to wear my flip-flops, but they kept, your foot keeps sliding off of it. It's just really uncomfortable. And I was like, man, I can feel how wet my flip-flops are. My feet are just wet. I'm just gonna take off my shoes. And so I did, and I walked the entire weekend around barefoot. I actually cut my feet on a piece of glass the last night that I was there. It barely even, I didn't even realize that it happened until I went to bed and I pulled a piece of glass out of my foot and I was like, oh, that's not supposed to be there. But I noticed that my experience, everyone kept, telling me, oh my God, you're so crazy. I can't believe you're out here walking barefoot. And I was just like, it's 10 times more comfortable than trying to put on shoes, getting my feet nice and warm and dry, and then having my socks and shoes soaked, and then having to walk around in soaking wet shoes. Like, I'd much rather just go barefoot. My feet actually were much more comfortable. They didn't feel nearly as cold. When I went and touched them, they felt cold, but I wasn't really feeling it. It was just like that was the natural state that my body was supposed to be in at the time. And I don't know, there was just something really delightful about like when the sun came out the one day. I just, went and found a puddle and started squishing my toes in the mud, just like patting my feet on the ground. And I was like, I'm so happy. I just love the pitter patter of my feet hitting the wet ground. Like, this is enjoyable, and it actually made me happy, like chemically happy.
As soon as we're done this call, I'm going to go outside and say hi to my mycelium and put my feet on them in the middle of the little mycelium circle.
Yeah,
One
do
of
it
my
for like
favorite-
half an hour or so, I think.
One of my favorite little practices is not just standing in the dirt, but I like to stand on a piece of dirt and I like to almost like scratch my feet through it, like make my spot, kick out the rocks, like almost like a chicken where you're like just brushing it away, and then digging, like actually moving my toes and like gripping the ground, or it's like I'm here and I could run, like I'm almost like testing to see how grounded I am. And that little bitty practice actually helps ground me even more, where I feel very in tune, not like I'm a guest just walking across something that I shouldn't
Ideally,
be.
that's what you want, right? You want not even like on the grass, but you want to go below the grass. You want to go literally in the dirt. That really does it. And it reminds me of the children too. Like I often observe children, like how they naturally, especially the smaller ones, like my son, even right now, like what, 3.5 years, and he, it's a struggle. And I stopped struggling a long time to want to put shoes on him or even socks. Like he doesn't like it. And even if it's cold and everybody's like, oh my God, no, he's gonna get sick, he's gonna do this, and like, leave him. There are certain things, he will know better than any one of us. So if he feels all right and if he feels good walking barefoot, I let him walk barefoot. And then I think about the stuff like, oh, what do we know and what do we sense? Maybe he's sensing something different, that stuff that we cannot let out and that accumulates in us, the electromagnetic frequency or the radiation that we're exposed to. Maybe that's still like a way for him to at least get some of it out, or to connect, to the ground and to his environment from that view. So I stopped, wanting to push shoes on his feet, which is almost impossible anyway.
Yeah. Michael, do you do that? Do you walk barefoot in Mexico?
I do. As a matter of fact, I was just experiencing that yesterday. As a matter of fact, I was tenderfooting all over the place. I was going to talk about that term, tenderfoot, because there's actually in the Boy Scouts, that's where you start, is tenderfoot, which the term tenderfoot, and I'll just read from the definition, is a newcomer or novice, especially a person unaccustomed to the hardships of the pioneer life. I guess that's Google's terminology or whatever, but isn't it interesting that and I definitely experienced that kind of thing. So I was walking up the through the I got on an island that's just full of rocks and stuff like that because I had to swim out there. I didn't have any shoes on, and I'm just going all over the place, and everybody else is just running around like like nothing is going on.
Who were these everybody else? Were they locals who that walk barefoot all the time?
All the locals, yeah. This is one of the locals hangouts, so
so you stuck out like a sore thumb, being a white boy going
Yeah, and actually, as I was getting to the end of it, I'm just going, you know what? I'm just tired of being like like a tenderfoot. I'm just gonna just grin and bear the pain, and then then just move on, And to some degree, you can do that, Of course, as you do that more often, your feet get tougher, but
less tender.
the reality is that there's a lot of it that's just your own mindset about like your connection with the earth is one in which you can have like a different mental connection that like almost like the pain, the sensitivity goes away, like you can just turn it off.
Well, I've also noticed that like when I'm walking barefoot and let's say my feet are really tender that day and I'm worried about stepping on things that are going to hurt me or it's just going to feel uncomfortable. The way I walk is different and it usually ends up in more pain to me than just trusting it because eventually I learned to trust my feet. There'll be a split second where my foot is like, don't put it there, move it. No, you don't want to step there. And when it actually helped, I
Maybe
can
it's
tell
maybe
when
it's
I'm
the mycelium telling you where to step.
could be, but it also I think it's more of a it's a mind body connection. When you're walking properly, it doesn't really matter if you step on. I can walk across gravel, and it's fine. But as soon as I like start getting tender footed, my feet will want to walk differently, and then I hurt more. It's just like if I learn to trust my feet, yes, there's gonna be a little bit of pain, but it's not gonna be near as much as if I keep trying to avoid the pain. That's when it hurts a lot. Because I watched the My Octopus Teacher or My Teacher the Octopus documentary, and in one of those scenes, this guy is walking across a beach that is nothing but shells. And all I could think was, "Oh my god, his feet have got to be." He was walking how I imagine like or how I witness like when I'm walking and I'm walking confidently. That's exactly how he was walking. He wasn't like searching for the right area to put his foot or walking, he was walking slower, but he was also walking with a steady purpose and with confidence. And I really think that helps. I don't know what it does for the pain. I don't know if it actually dulls the pain or if our minds just don't register it or maybe the pain is all in our minds.
Yeah, I definitely noticed a difference because like Acapulco Bay, the sand is like a very coarse sand, and it's almost like walking on little bits of gravel, so it's real hard to walk on. But then when I went out there and did my 4 hours of mountain climbing and everything else, rock climbing, and just finally decided hell with it, and then I swam back and I got on the beach, it was like, oh man, this sand is so soft.
That's the buy a goat, sell a goat thing.
So I don't know, but that is it's strange, but I definitely think that experience, to me, you should have that experience often, because I definitely think like the modern living is one in which it takes you away from the natural, like rhythms of the earth and the natural things that are going on in the earth. And it's also like what's going on with people's fear of germs and everything else. The more anxiety that you create and the more separation you have between nature and yourself, the more trouble you're going to have. And it's just creating that connection, and doing it regularly, I think you do yourself a great deal of benefit.
True. It brings me to think of we have been talking about grounding ourselves like physically with walking barefoot, relating to plants, relating to our environment. And then in the yogic tradition, the lowest chakra, the lowest energy center is the so-called Muladhara chakra, which is at the base, at the root, which is also, where when we are born, like as little children, this is the first one, to open up, to break up. And it is really connected to the very essentials of life, so to say, our fight and flight reaction, our instincts, they are rooted right there. And therefore, something like food, for example, or like eating, is something that grounds us as well. And that was interesting, when Justin was talking the kind of things that he eats and the fermenting and the active, seeking of a relationship with the earth, with the soil, even through the food that you're taking, which is certainly a whole different quality of grounding yourself. And so so really like those basic needs that are being fulfilled is something that will help you to balance out and to ground yourself if you don't feel grounded. And the nicest house is not worth much if it's not built on a solid foundation. And to
Wait.
have a strong foundation right there.
Speaking of houses, you were going to tell us about the earthen floor.
Yeah, exactly.
When you have a
That
chance,
was a
we
nice
also have
experience.
another comment from the audience.
Another comment.
Sure. So the floor, the earthen floor, that was a nice project that I did as part of the center I built in Jamaica up on the mountaintop. And I was very excited about that because I wanted that connection with the soil. I didn't want anything in between. And so the earthen floor, it's the I've been working with soil, with earth before. So to do cob or wattle and dub, it's called in Jamaica. Or I did bamboo and dub as well, where you have like a wooden structure, and then you will smear, like a clay, soil, straw mixture over it, and it will get like really hard. So it's like an ancient way of building, really. And then you have a specific mixture that you can apply for floor as well, which will take, depending on the temperature, like a few weeks for completely dry, but it gets really like rock hard. And to just research some of the ancient ways of how those floors have been sealed. You can use like linseed oil, and then people also use blood, like cow or bull blood, that basically stain the floor and seal at the same time. So it's really amazing, like what.
And then you're walking on blood.
What it is.
Your carpet is blood. Isn't that a little necromancer?
You make it sound so
unnatural.
It is a really good staining agent.
I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just like suddenly my Western sensibilities are like, blood.
Hold on, Western. But here, like, look at we call it Fachwerk. I'm going to look up the word for Fachwerk, but those are the ancient houses that are still in place here and well maintained in some cases, where you have
wait. We
a wooden
as
structure.
In Jamaica, or we as in Germany? Okay,
talking about
Germany,
Germany because you say Western, so that's the Western world, so to say, too, right?
Right.
And those used to be stained with blood as well, with cow blood, and that's why they used to be red, and they still are painted today in red. But that's what preserved the wood in this case. So those types of houses, they rested on a wooden structure, and then the free spaces in between the wooden the timber was basically filled up with a wattle and dub structure, where you have like a wooden interwoven stick structure that was then smoothed out and covered with or plastered is the word, with cob. So that's Western world too.
That's cool. I've always found cob houses very fascinating because they're made out of earth, right? And then you can make all the little shelves and little customizations on the inside as you build it. So you can have, you know what I mean? And you can just be very creative with them.
And it's breathing, so those, you have earthen walls that there's communication, there's interaction there, and there's ways of sealing them off so water won't get through, but they're still breathing. And then,
it's earthquake resistant and fire resistant and everything resistant.
Yeah, and imagine, and the resource is right there on site. You don't have to truck it in, you don't have to ship it in. You don't have like a lot of waste, or anyways being produced, energy wasted. It has been done since from ancient times on, and so it's proven. It's lasting at times. There's like there's houses hundreds of years old that have been built with mud. And,
over 500. I've seen some over 500, like on pictures. But yeah,
high buildings as well in Yemen, for example.
Where? Yemen?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
But Willow, there was a comment.
Yeah, what's Tony? We like Tony.
Yeah, it is Tony again. So he says he's got a good-sized mud puddle in the yard where him and the four-legged friend in the house play. Feels great having the mud between my toes, and he seems to feel less stress afterwards. It works good to circulate and filter the well water through the ground too. Which I hadn't thought of that part.
Yeah, that's one of the functions that the earth has as well, right? To filter water and to enrich it as well with the mineral content of the earth. So it's again that interaction of those two elements, the earth and the water, that brings us a life-sustaining and life-giving element. And this is really the minerals that are solved in the water is really what gives plant matter then structure, because it's that, those minute mineral molecules that give that give structure and give the plants the ability to stand up straight and grow tall. So the foundation, we stand upon the earth, we stand the basic needs. Once those are fulfilled, then we can build a good lasting building that then is in connection with the foundation. So just as the roots are like an integral part of the plant that sustains it, that keep on you know pulling up resources from the soil and going way up to the ground, because the smallest of the leaves, way on top of the crown, they're still getting the benefits, and they're benefiting from the stability and the life sustaining matter that the root system really is bringing up. And the same way with us too. If below is as above, and if above is below, then hold on, like, is there similarity to us as well, as living organisms as well? And should we also focus on being well rooted? Should we focus on having our basic needs being met, shelter, food, security, then but also love, support, that we have all of that in place? And how do we feel, how does that affect our ability to interact and to be in balance with everyone around us? And is it maybe possible that if certain things, certain blocks are there in life, and we can't make the next step and rise ourselves to excellence and to the next level of excellence, does that maybe have to do because something in our foundation is missing, or we don't have a solid foundation, like a good foundation that we can step upon in order to reach higher in life?
When you say foundation, that brought up something, because it seems like, especially when you look at some of these ancient structures like the pyramids and stuff like that, the understanding that the people that constructed that had to have in regard to building a foundation for a structure that had incredible amount of weight, is something that I don't think most common people understand. Because if me being in construction, I've built a lot of houses, so forth. And if you dig a foundation for a house, you've got to be able to understand like how much weight that the ground underneath can sustain. And when you're talking about a lot of weight, and if you look at what they do for like skyscrapers and stuff like that, they build foundations that are, they could be hundreds of feet down to like solid rock to get that kind of support. And I, that in itself is kind of an interesting understanding of like how things really work. And if you look at like again, the pyramids, and especially the what is it, Machu Picchu in Peru, where it's in an earthquake zone, and it's probably at least 10,000 years old, maybe 20, 30,000 years old. To be able to sustain a structure over that period of time in an earthquake zone without any cracks, or, to me, suggests that ancient people had a really good understanding of Earth and how to build upon it. And I really don't think even modern construction has anywhere near that kind of understanding at this point.
Well, even look at some of the old bridges and stuff. Their construction is so impeccable, and 200 years later, they're still standing. Versus the newer bridges, 50 years later, we need to refurbish, renovate.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you have to dig deep in order to build high and to reach high.
Well, I mean, that's the solution in the modern world, but it's also, in the ancient world, I'm not sure if that was actually the case. I think they may have had a much different understanding of how foundation came about, because I still don't. I have no idea of how they built like the pyramids,
That's
where
an
they
interesting
did.
question. Even those buildings that we mentioned earlier in Yemen, who are several stories high. Like I would be interested to find out like what kind of how they resolved that foundation
Yeah.
um, aspect of it. And what came to my mind also was uh, the environment and the conditions. And I think that's a nice allegory. I mentioned that in the permaculture podcast, as far as I remember, where I touched upon the fact that, like if you look at a piece of soil, you have a certain amount of potential in that soil. So there's, hundreds, sometimes thousands of different seeds and potentials for different plants to grow. And depending on the conditions, whether you trample on it and it's compacted, or, whether fire burns over it, or it's extremely moist, or it's loose or compacted.
Yep.
So it's those seeds that will sprout and that will grow that are needed, or for the compacted one to loosen up, or for the sandy one, those plants will grow that kind of will hold the soil together. So nature seems to seek balance and harmony, and will allow those things, those plants to grow that give it stability. And I find that interesting, because then it is the environment, the condition of the environment that will actually trigger certain traits or certain plants to grow. So how about us? So we also, through our childhood, through our life experience, we experienced, shade and sun, and we experienced some compaction. Sometimes we were all loose and all up in it, and so the character traits and the qualities that we developed certainly were in reaction to what we experienced in our lifetimes. And so can you see that within yourself, how you grew certain habits or certain traits in reaction to what you would have experienced from the outside?
Cheesecake. I just wanted to get Willow's attention.
I was really excited for us. I was looking at the Facebook page
Yeah.
and I realized the video had stopped, so I was trying to get it to start again, and then I heard cheesecake. I'm like, huh?
I don't think we have any control over what goes on the Facebook page. We're feeding it, and if it doesn't eat it correctly, SOL.
True.
But
Does anybody want to answer Dennis's question there?
I did.
What was the question?
The cheesecake was the answer.
Cheesecake is always the answer, don't you know? Sorry, Dennis, what was your question?
I phrase a different one. What would trigger you to grow deep and strong roots? Which condition or which challenge in life would challenge you to root yourself deeply and to find stability on earth, in earth?
So the same question. That cannot be answered with cheesecake.
Although cheesecake is a
See?
great motivation,
I'm learning.
I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is finding an environment in which that was where I wanted to grow. Like, I imagine, if I were a tree, I'd walk, obviously I don't walk, but in my mind, I'm this tree that's like walking around the world, and I'm like, where would I like to set my roots? Where do I want to be? Maybe it'd be a tumbleweed, and where it comes to mind is like someplace that's like lusciously green, lots of water, lots of animals, lots of fungi, where there's like a rich environment.
Party all the time.
Somewhere near water, somewhere near running water, and that's what I think of. So maybe in my mind, somewhere that is emotionally enriching. That would
That's an interesting
prompt me.
parallel with the running water and the emotion, because water is emotion, how we
That's
know
why
from
I said that, because
yeah.
in my mind, what I'm literally picturing is like, if I'm a tree, what am I doing? And I'm running around this world, I can't find any place, and then probably because I've been watching Outlander lately, all I see is like Ireland, where it's like luscious green, and then the blue of the mountains, and then these rushing like rivers and waterfalls, but it's like such vibrant but deep colors. And I can't imagine any place other than near a waterfall or running water. And so in my mind, I'm like, I know running water or water correlates to emotion. So maybe that's what I'm looking for. Maybe it's an emotionally rich environment where I knew I wasn't going to run out of that and I was going to be able to sustain myself. That's where I would plant my roots and that's where I would want to grow.
It's a
You know
good
what I
answer.
just remembered? You remember a few shows back when we had Shambhavi on, and she was touching upon trust, and that is where I connect with right now, which is that example of the piece of soil which has all those different seeds, and to have the trust that whatever condition, whatever outside condition is going to affect, that piece of soil or us, there's seeds within ourselves and there's potential within ourselves to be able to deal with that. And this is something I feel, I would want to root myself in, that trust in that whatever comes along, whatever is tomorrow, whatever the next moment brings, that there's potential within myself, within our nature, within nature itself, that we can deal with the challenges of life. If it gets too sandy and too loose, okay, we have something, that can hold the soil. If it's too water, we have something that can deal with that. And
If the
and
sand is too rough, we walk over rocks, and then the sand is no longer too rough.
that is the potential that lies within earth, within the soil, that we tread upon every day. And I see Justin is unmuting, and I also wanted to highlight like an amazing project that Justin is working on. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Ooh.
Sure. I just wanted to comment in and say that what you're talking about sounds a lot like biosecurity. And Paul Stamets talks a lot about how biosecurity is created through biodiversity. And just about all of the themes that you touched on were well-watered places, which is the definition of a garden, is a well-watered place with boundaries. But it's also that to be able to adapt to anything that enters the environment, the biggest way to adapt to anything new that enters the environment is to have as many possible areas of diversity inside of your environment. And that's really the key, is that you have a multitude of different plant lives, because each piece of that ecosystem acts to some degree as an immune system for the entire ecosystem.
That's cool.
That's interesting.
So what about your project? I want to know.
So I've had I'll start a story. A few years ago, I was woofing, a willing worker on organic farms. So I got to experience a lot of larger and even small scale farming. I was in Colorado. They were all vegetable farms. And I started having ideas of how farms could be more circular. I didn't really think in the conventional norms. I just let my mind be whole in trying to conceptualize what was going on and what the actual process of humans cultivating and sharing the food that they cultivate is. And so there are some big problems to tackle, such as the sharing of food, the growing of food, the security in that. And where I found that it all started was in continually rebuilding soil, because each year the soil itself has to have the organic matter needed to produce high quality food. If the soil is lacking, the food will be lacking. It's a direct correlation, absolutely.
And then we're
So
going to be lacking as well, right? Because we depend on that.
absolutely, that is the chain of organic growth. It starts in the soil. Really, everything that walks on the soil is dependent on those top 6 inches of topsoil and their ability to be productive and fertile. The project that I've actually been conceptualizing is a 3-piece system where one piece is composting, one piece is gardening, and one piece is bioremediation. for the purposes of this here, I'd just like to talk about the composting aspect, because I think that is one of the most important. And that's because we're facing a problem here in the United States. Nearly a fifth of all of our landfill usage is organic matter that's just being wasted and rotting and turning into methane, and will absolutely never be inside of usable soil. Because any living organism would have to dig through the rest of a landfill just to get to that organic matter. And I think that's wholly tragic, because we're depending on biochemicals and phosphorus based fertilizers to do the job of just plain organic matter and time. And that we're already having some noticeable effects in the health of our ecosystem and our species as a whole because of this transition that's gone on through farming. So I wanted to create a system that actually makes something valuable out of that 20% of all of our food waste, out the 20% of our landfills that's filled with food waste. Now, in the 90s, Japan was having a food waste crisis because they were producing so much food that they couldn't actually reconcile where to put it. They were filling their landfills, it was rotting, they had too many people close to, it would just smell because wasted food would be rotting in the landfills. So they used a solution of microbacteria that was found by a professor in Okinawa in Japan in the 80s, which was called effective microorganisms. And if you use effective microorganisms to inoculate a bran, be it like oats or barley or wheat or what have you, you can then dry that and you have what's called bokashi, which is a Japanese word for fermented organic matter. And this is an anaerobic, without air, blend of microorganisms that will actually ferment food waste. So instead of taking your food and putting it in a landfill, or even letting it sit just in your backyard in a standard turn pile, you actually put it in a sealed container. You sprinkle on some dried microorganism blend, bokashi, and then you just give it some time, and you can check back a couple of weeks later, and all of your food will be white. Not quite myceliated, but definitely cultured. Like if you're used to seeing rotting food in the fridge where it's like green moldy, it's not green mold. It's actually white. Like you can tell it's healthy, and you'll smell it, and it smells sweet, and it's obvious that it's fermenting. And they actually use this because you can have a much quicker processing of organic matter into something usable, because once it ferments, you can just bury it in the soil, and in a month or so it'll actually be ready to start transferring that nutrient to the plants that are available there. That, and you're also adding billions and billions of beneficial bacteria each time that you do it. So my system actually uses that same methodology of a anaerobic fermentation process, and is able to do that at scale to turn it into a valuable soil amendment, so that we can divert that food waste away from our landfills and turn it into something usable. And then the gardening aspect is actually turning that back into food for the community. And the bioremediation aspect is turning the excess value, both in terms of the money it makes and the soil it produces, to be used to actively heal the earth and have bioremediatory processes.
Nice.
So that, if that's not a perfect example of how we can use our human potential to be not, like some would want to call it, like a pest or a cancer of earth, but some,
Stewards.
stewards of the earth, and then be a active and play an active positive role in in being in harmony with nature, with the
That's
planet
what it
that we
says
live
in the Bible, to be caretakers for the earth and all its living creatures.
It has some interesting quotes on dirt, on clay, on earth, on soil, that can be found in the Bible and other spiritual books as well. And
I'm
I
not
see
familiar, but we're already at
we are
407.
advancing, yeah.
We're
And
this is an
what I actually would love
advanced
to do-
show. We need a part 2 for Earth with
There's much to
Justin.
talk about.
I want
still,
Justin
yeah.
to come back. He's smart and he's got a lot of interesting knowledge. Well, we should have Justin and Gabriel on the same show, and then they can talk like, esoteric alchemy of the earth.
Well, I just want to share this in these last few moments. I don't actually have land to start this farm on. So over the course of this winter season, I plan on making a documentary. It is one that I'm going to call Food World Order, and it will start back all the way back at the Rockefellers, starting the oil monopolization of the pharmaceuticals and our divergent path away from natural medicines, and through all of these problems and solutions. So if there's anybody that
Justin will be on a lot more
resonates
shows. Go ahead. So if there's anybody that resonates with.
yeah, if there's anybody that's interested in sharing their research or making sure that I have a complete picture of what I'm covering in this undertaking, please do get a hold of me.
Awesome.
And I'd love to collaborate further, and that'll be in the works.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that sounds
Fantastic.
great. Tony's interested, Tony McCarty, but he's on Facebook, so I don't know if you're on Facebook, Justin, but I
I
suppose.
do want to
be
read
able to
his
find me.
last comment, though.
Okay. Well,
Tony
he's got
McCarty.
lots of good comments we never got to. I feel sad. I'm sorry, Tony.
No, there was only
The foundations and buildings and roots in nature.
yeah. He
Yeah.
was commenting on how he studied architecture and he saw many similarities between the foundations of buildings and the root structures of
Yeah.
plants. Which
Dennis, you had something else you were gonna end
Yes.
with.
Yes, I wanted to end with a quote of Khalil Gibran again.
Oh, but hang on, it's not the end yet because Roz also said she really loves Justin's idea and his presentation, and she said it was straightforward and clear. Now you can read the final quote.
Agreed. Thank you so much to all our listeners for the continuous input and the questions and the comments. That is enriching in itself.
Nice.
And so Khalil Gibran says, and forget not that the earth delights to feel your bare feet and the winds long to play with your hair. Short and sweet.
Good ending. Good ending. All right. Well,
All
thank
right.
you everybody for listening for such a long time. We totally went over time, but go ahead, Michael.
Well,
Monday.
we started a little late. Yeah, so next Monday, I guess we're just going to be surprising people with what we've got in order for next week. But we will return on Monday, and we'll be back on Wednesday as well. Any ideas on Wednesday either? No? Anything?
Yeah, we had something for Wednesday.
Okay.
Sorry, I closed that window. We'll have to
I
let you
don't
guys
remember.
know later.
y'all will have to
In any
wait.
case,
Yeah, you'll have to wait.
thank you for your time and attention. We hope this was informative and useful. And of course, we'll be back on Mondays and Wednesdays at 5:35 Eastern Time or 2:35 Pacific Time.
Yeah. And thank you, Shambhavi. Love to you too. And bye, everybody who was listening. And Roz and Tony and a bunch of other
All that.
people.
And
Yes.
Pam.
And
Pam was
Pam.
on.
Yes. So, mwah.
Thank you. And thank you, Justin, so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you,
for your great
Justin.
input.
Definitely.
You're
Thank you
awesome.
for having me today.
Very
this was great to
awesome.
share this.
All right, I'm playing the outro now. Dun, 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 dun. Bye.
Bye.